So it's great. Like relevant theory has been like seen as the theory for communication, like understanding. But Hugh's looking at relevance theory and production side of communication, which we are really excited to listen to. So yes, go ahead, Hugh. It's floor yours.
Okay, sorry for the delay. Today I'm going to talk about a relevant theoretic approach to production. So yes, I'm going to talk about what might be involved in production and how a relevance theoretic approach can help to account for this. So today I'm going to have some discussions about some general ideas about production and a production heuristic, which might be similar to a relevance guided comprehension heuristic with some empirical work. So this project is from part of my PhD thesis, and I'm working on developing this idea. So just firstly talk about some criticism about pragmatic theories. So according to Cash, the Gaussian-rooted pragmatics, particularly relevant theory, is hero-centered because he say relevant theory is based on the Gaussian approach, which is one of the main regions of this hero-centeredness is a Gaussian modular view that requires splitting the interpretation process into two phases, what is said and what is communicated. And also, although the Gaussian theory with its cooperative principle and maxims was supposed to embrace conversation as a whole, basically its further development has remained hero-centered with less emphasis on interest in the speaker's position. So relevance theory is a post-Gaussian theory. So Cash argues that relevance theory may not much talk about production like this. However, communication is like dancing. This is what Scott Phillips said on his TED Talk. He said that communication is like dancing, which is continuous and impromptu back and forth movement between two people. And communication is kind of a practice of simultaneously expressing and recognizing from one to another. So like this, we cannot explain interpretation without production. It is inevitable to discuss production as they are connected to each other in communication. So without mentioning communicators, there would be no explanations for interpretation processes. And also the Gaussian approaches might focus more on interpretation comparatively, but it does not mean that they are not concerned about production. So Grice's maxims may guide both communicators and addressees, and communicators' communicative behaviors can create some expectations about speakers' meaning, but also maxims can offer some constraints which prevent speakers from saying or implicating just anything, as Saul stated. Grice discussed the cooperative principles and maxims based on this presumption, and the speaker sings and would expect the hearer to think that the hearer thinks that it is within the competence of the hearer to work out. And yeah, that is the kind of the presumption that Grice had when he developed his idea about maxims and cooperative principles. And also the principles of relevant theory did not straightforwardly talk about production, but still it gives some ideas about what communicators might think from what their addressees might expect from their communicators' production. So communicators' production may focus on what would be worth the audience's processing effort and what would the audience make assumptions about my communicators' abilities and preferences so that the addressees can reach a precise interpretation towards the communicator's meaning. And And also Wilson and Speller said the goal of inferential pragmatics is to explain how the hearers infers the speaker's meaning on the basis of the evidence provided. The relevance theoretic account is based on another of Grice's central claims that utterances automatically create expectations which guide the hearer towards the speaker's meaning. So this might be a bit different from what Ketchcast thinks that relevance theory is hearer-centered, as relevance theory does not fully focus on the two splitting phases of what is said and what is communicated, but some inferential approach of Grice. So rather, it gives an opportunity to think about how communicators formulate their utterances that can guide the hearers. So I started to think about what production might look like and how the notion of relevance can help to account for production. Of course, production and interpretation processes are different, but still they may share some similarities, I think. So the possible similarities can be that the communicators and addressees, they are constantly make assumptions about each other when they produce their utterances and when they interpret their communicators' communicative behaviors. And also, there might be some expectation or constraints in a particular context. So the communicators may think about what they have to say or how to say it in a certain context. And also the addressees may think about some expectation or constraint when they have to interpret their communicators' meaning in a particular context. And also, both production and interpretation may be guided by some heuristics or a heuristic. The heuristics can be multiple or maybe it can be single, but just research on heuristics, especially about production, this is a very early stage, so I cannot assert it, but there might be some heuristics that can guide communicators' production and addresses interpretation. And also, both of them may follow a path of least effort. Of course, unlike addressees, the communicators may think more about some factors compared to interpretation processes, because especially if the communicators start the conversation, then they have to consider more than one thing. But addressees may firstly they focus on their ostensive stimulus from the communicators. So that might be some differences, but still communicators may follow a path of least effort in their production. So talking about some possible differences is about when it is initiated. So the addressees' interpretation processes may begin when they got some ostensive stimulus from the communicators. But for the communicators, it is not sure when they start communication and when they decide to say something. And also another difference is obviously when it stops. So in an account of relevance theory, the addressees might stop interpretation processes when their interpretation is satisfied, but about the productions, maybe it might be a little bit different. And also there can be some differences in terms of the range or type. So about the production, there can be many types of productions like self-talk. So do we have to consider the production as only the one thing? So for example, is the production in the interaction with another person and the production when I'm doing the self-talk, are they same or not? So that can be another consideration. And so to develop some ideas about the production processes model, I was thinking about some research on turn taking. So Sachs et al. Observed the interactions between the interlocutors, and one of the features of interaction they found was that interlocutors' utterances often overlap. So, and then Levinson and Torreira examined the 348 conversations, and they found that 77% of the recordings showed the signal corresponding to speech by one speaker, and that only 3.8% showed two speakers talking simultaneously. So both of the research actually may imply that interlocutors are simultaneously involved in production and interpretation. So when they overlap, when the production and interpretation, when the communicators and addressees, they overlap, then it can imply that the interlocutors are listening to their speakers, but also they are starting to participate in production. And also, when they don't overlap, it may imply that interlocutors can quite precisely make assumptions about when their speakers stop speaking and when they can start speaking. So in any ways, it may show that we are spontaneously involved in production and interpretation in communication. And that's how I got the idea that maybe the production processes and interpretation processes are not that much different from each other, because I'm not sure if I can say that we are switching the interpretation mode or production mode, but still, if we have to involve in the both of them simultaneously sometimes, then the processes may be not very much different from each other, so that we can producing and interpreting in a very short time. And also another idea I got is from the Levinson's activity type. So Levinson's proposed the notion of an activity type, which is a kind of the constraints on participants setting or some allowable contributions. So it says that there might be some constraints on our production in a specific context, like football game, or task in a workshop, or dinner party, like this. So it might overlap to the Saul's statement about Grice's maxim that our productions is constrained in some way, and we are not formulating utterances. We just say whatever we want to say, but we are just thinking about what to say and how to say it. And so the assumptions about the production processes is that probably the production and the interpretation, maybe they look similar. So that's how I got the idea from the Speber-Wilson's relevance guided comprehension heuristic. So it says the addressees follow a passive list upward in deriving cognitive effect, and then they stop when their expectations of relevance are satisfied. So production may be also guided by a production heuristic, so that our production can be constrained and to make our addressees to understand what we want to say. So production is very complicated. So, and there are so many things that we have to think about. But initially, Park, me, and with Clark, we proposed some initial ideas about what production processes may look like. And this is a relevance-focused production heuristic. So we assume that production, also the communicators follow a passive least effort in formulating and producing communicative acts, which will give rise to positive cognitive effects for members of the audience. And then they produce an utterances that permits members of the audience to find an interpretation that meets their expectations of relevance. And then they seek evidence for how addressees are understanding my communicative acts. So it can be kind of the monitoring process. And then the communicators may reformulate or produce new communicative behavior when we assume that expectations of relevance have not been met, or my addressees is likely to have come to conclusions I do not intend. So probably the first and second one maybe a little bit look similar to the comprehension heuristic, but C and D clauses, they are something different from the interpretation processes, and we assume that those might be the features, one of the features of production. So based on the idea of a production heuristic, I conducted some empirical work to explore how the communicators formulate their utterances and if a production heuristic makes sense or not. So I recruited 89 participants, and they're all native speakers of Korean in their late 20s and early 30s. And they, of course, they gave their responses in Korean. And I used the online survey program, which is Video Ask, because when I conducted this research, it was a pandemic, so it was difficult to recruit the participants offline. So I used this method, and the participants were audio instructed and recorded and submitted their responses to Video Ask. And each participant had 3 tasks: 1 picture description task and 2 role-play based story retelling tasks. And some participants were selected based on their availability for follow-up questions. So I sent a link of the Video Ask to the participants, and if they click the link, then they can see this video. So if they click the video, then I give some instruction within audio recorded, and I also briefly introduced the characters shown in the picture. So the girl's name is Susie, and the second boy's name is June, and he's 5 years old, and the baby's name is May, and the dog's name is Choco, like this. And then if they listen to the instruction and they started recorded their responses. So each participant received either picture A or B. So picture A, everything is same, but the behaviors of the children and the dog are different. So maybe everyone has a different opinions about the pictures, but comparatively, picture A shows some peaceful atmosphere at home, but picture B showing comparatively is a bit chaotic. So, and having some problematic pick actions there. So with the picture, I gave them questionnaires. There are 2 types of questionnaires. The first one, the questionnaire type 1 is task 1, starting with the picture description task. And then task 2, task 2 and 3 were the picture story retelling task based on the pictures. So task 2 instructs: imagine you are a babysitter, you are taking care of the kids and the dog of Mr. and Mrs. Lee. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Lee have come back home. They ask you, how are the kids today? And you will say, and task 3, having a similar situation, but Imagine you are a babysitter. You are taking care of the kids and the dog of Mr. and Mrs. Lee. You have finished your work and come back to your place. Your best friend called you. How are the children? And you will say, so these tasks 2 and 3, I gave them a role and gave them a specific audience to speak. And about the questionnaire type 2, well, maybe interface is too small, so I cannot see that. But questionnaire type 2, it just the order of the tasks were different. So the questionnaire type 2, the task order was like task 1 and task 2, task 3 and task 2, because I changed the order if the order of the task may affect the participants' responses, because about the task 2 and task 3, they may repeat their responses, and the repetitive storytelling can affect their production. So I changed the order of the tasks. So there were 4 groups, and there were 4 groups, and then group 1, they received the picture A and the questionnaire type number 1, and then the group number 2, they received the picture A and the questionnaire type number 2, and then group 3 received the picture B and the questionnaire number 1, and group 4 they received the picture B and the questionnaire type number 2. And then for the analysis, I gave the object each number. So the picture A and B, even though their actions are different, but all the objects, including the characters, are all same. So I gave each object and characters a number. So here is a list of number drawn objects in the picture A and B. So there are 19 list of number drawn objects in pictures A and B. The reason why I gave the number is because I wanted to actually see what the participants did not, what the participants talk about, not drawn objects or actions, because I thought it is important that what kind of inferences that the participants may make, depending on the instructions and depending on the situation, communication situation. So based on these numbers, I got some statistics. So there are some total number of words formulated by participants by task. So the task 1 is a picture description task. So it obviously it shows the most number of words that participants created compared to the task 2 and 3, which is story retelling tasks. Because picture description task, they just have to say everything they can see in the picture. So it is quite obvious that it has the most number of words. And I also counted so the number of mentions of drawn and not drawn objects by task. So in the task 1, picture description task, it's the same reason, and then the participants mention the drawn words more than when they had the task 2 and 3, because they just had to describing the picture, and they just pointed all the objects and characters drawn in the picture. But comparatively in task 2 and 3, they did not mention the drawn objects a lot, but comparatively they formulated the words which are not drawn in the pictures. And there are also some features of the participants' production, and I've got some patterns from the reference and some notion of positiveness and negativeness and the types of sentences. So, okay, it's a shame that I cannot see that everything here, but so about the reference, there was differences in calling the characters in task 2 and 3. So when the participants imagine that they were talking to the parents of the children, they used the names of the characters. But on the other hand, when they imagined that they were talking to their best friend, they used some features of the characters when they have to mention the characters. So like participant 17 say that, hello, Mrs. Lee, today Susie was good reading a book alone, and June read a book, and May ate well, and Choco just fell asleep, like this. But in task 3, the participant 17 say there were 3 children, so it was tough, though, but it was okay because the oldest was 7 years old. So this kid could play alone very well. There was a dog I like, so it was better than I thought, but it is still not easy to handle 3 kids like this. So these participants definitely knew the name of the first oldest kid, Susie, but did not use a name when this person imagined that he or she is talking to their best friend. So it shows that this is a graph of the number of references to characters. So in task number 1, mostly the participants refer the characters a lot because they have to describe the picture compared to the story retelling tasks. And then this shows that the number of references to characters by name and features. In task number 1, in the picture description task, they used more names of the characters when they mention the characters. But in task 2, when the participants imagined that they were talking to the parents of the children, they did not mention the characters with their features, but they used names of the children. But in task 3, when they imagined that they were talking to their best friend, that they did not really mention the name of the children, but they just mentioned the character. And also, picture B also shows the similar result. So, and then also about the number of the references to characters by name and features, it shows a similar results that in the picture description task, the participants mentioned the children's name a lot, but when they imagined that they were talking to the parents of the children, they did not mention, they did not call the characters by their feature, but by name. And also, of course, in task 3, when they imagined that they were talking to the best friend, many people mentioned the name of the children, but mostly they also mention the children with the feature a lot, more than the task 1 and 2. And also there's another patterns about some notion of the positiveness and negativeness. So when some participants imagined that they were talking to the children's parents, they were more likely to talk about something positive. But on the contrary, when they imagined that they were talking to their best friend, they were more likely to talk about something negative and their personal feelings, like how they might feel in the situation. So, for example, this is a responses from participant 67. When this person imagined that she or he is talking to the parents of the children, today kids actively played. Susie was interested in books. June was interested in the dinosaur and car, and May liked going here and there. Choco also had no problem and played well alone. But this person said when imagine that he or she is talking to the best friend, this person said it was absolutely chaotic. Susie did not get down from a bookcase. June was hectic with toys. It was impossible to communicate with May. Choco, the dog Choco, did not listen to me at all. So the interesting is that the picture B showing some problematic situations, but they did not talk about any problems when they imagined that they were talking to the parents of the children, but um, but just showing that everything was so good. But when they imagined that they were talking to the best friend, they were very honest that, like a picture, it was very chaotic and their work was very tough. But another interesting point is even some participants, when they got the picture A, so comparatively peaceful situation, their result was quite similar. So participant 34, when he or she imagined that he's talking to the best friend, today the work was hectic. The kids were not staying in the same place. One was taking a baby walker, another was playing and sitting on the floor, and the other was sitting on the desk. They were not together, so it was distracting like this, even though they had a peaceful situation. But when this person imagined that they were talking to the parents of the children, participant 34 said the kids were very calm and gentle today. They were not any trouble and did not seem problematic, and they were generally quiet like this. So, again, it shows some interesting result that the participants were more likely to say something good, something positive to the parents of the children, regardless of the situations, regardless of the pictures. And comparatively, they want to talk about something emotional and some honest things, or something something boring, or any other feelings to their best friend. And another feature I focused on is the types of sentences. So here is the number of sentences that do not refer to the display of objects and characters. So the sentences which refer the display of objects and characters are like the sentences like this is chair and here is table and there is Susie, like this kind of sentences. So I focused on the sentences which do not describe the display of objects and characters. So here the statistics shows that in picture description task number 1, obviously it is describing the display of objects and characters. So the number of most sentences talking about the display, but comparatively in task 2 and 3, participants refer to something not related to the display of objects and characters. So there were type of sentences when they were not talking about they did not refer the display of objects and characters. So first sentence was they suggest some ideas to their audience, to the parents of the children or their best friend. And another sentence they mostly created is personal feeling. So the participants express how they feel about their day or work. And also some participants talk about some safety. The participants point out some problems which threaten safety. And also some participants mentioned the parents of the children, but it was very interesting because I mentioned the parents in the instruction and in the question, but it's not drawn at all. But some participants mentioned the parents. And also some participants explain what they will do as a babysitter. So in Korea, the babysitter is not just a person literally babysitting, but it is more related to some educational concepts. So babysitter, they are babysitting the children, but they are also teaching mostly. So some participants talk about their teaching plan. And also there are some other sentences do not belong to any other categories, and sometimes they talk about some weather and talk about some gender issues like this. So here's the number of the types of sentences in task number 1. So in the picture description task, they were mostly talk about parents when they do not refer the display of objects or characters. It's quite interesting because I asked them to describe the picture, but they mentioned the parents, which is not described in the pictures. And in the task number 2, the participants, when they imagined that they were talking to the parents of the children, they made a lot of suggestions. So like they suggested what their children might need in their daily life, or in studying something like this. And also they were worried about some safety issue as well. And also task 3, it shows different result, that when they imagine that they were talking to their best friend, they will mostly talk about their personal feelings about how their work is like and how they feel about it and how their life is going, and how their some people also mention how they think about their marriage life and having children like this. So all this result, I suggest that probably the communicators, they are trying to formulate their utterances based on their assumptions about their addressees' expectations of relevance. So like the result of the reference, some of them might think that the children's names are not really what their best friends are interested in. So that's why they did not mention their children's name. But when they imagined that they were talking to the parents of the children, it is impolite, in Korean context, it is impolite to call their children by features rather than names. So that's why their reference were different depending on their audience. And also about the types of sentences here, they were just formulated their utterances based on what their hearers might want to hear and what their hearers might interested in and what their hearers might need to hear like this. And yeah, so that's why this empirical work may suggest that communicators may follow some relevance-focused production heuristic, especially the clause number A and B. So especially this empirical work suggests that communicators are focusing on on meeting their addressees' expectations of relevance, and that is the very important resource to formulate their utterances. But with this empirical work, actually, it does not really show about the clauses C and D, the monitoring or reformulation, because this empirical work was just one-side communication. It was not real communication. So it was difficult to find out the evidence if the communicators follow C and D. So, so I had some small empirical work with observation. So I invited two pairs of friends, and each of them had two interactions, one with their friend and the other with strangers. And the conversations were observed on Google Meet, an online communication service. So I invited the participants, and then I just muted and I just let them talk. I did not give any topic and I did not really say anything about it, but I just let them speak. So after the interaction for 10 to 15 minutes, and then they had an interview with me. So there were some discussions about what they think about what they are doing in the interactions. So in the interaction, they think they were constructing some rapport with their interlocutors. And so even though the interlocutors did not say something interesting, they just responded very well, and they give some empathy and sympathy, and also they show their interest even though they did not really interested in, especially when they talk to the stranger. And also they thought they were building a good relationship and making some good atmosphere in conversation. So the interaction between the friends, of course, they think they got already constructed a good relationship, but with the stranger, that was the first time they met each other. So they try to make a good atmosphere, and some of them say that they didn't want to construct the bad image to the stranger because that was the first time they met each other. So they wanted to show something good about themselves to the stranger. And also, they made a lot of assumptions about their interlocutors' preferred topics, especially when they talk to the stranger, because between the friends, they already know about each other. So, of course, still they make assumptions about each other. But when they had an interaction with the stranger, they made more assumptions about their interlocutor's preferred topic because they have no information about the stranger. So, so it shows that the communicators spontaneously seek for their addressees' interest and what their addressees might like about it, and they are keep monitoring their addressees. So all of them, actually, the participants, they said if the topic, if it seems like their addressee is not interested in the current topic, then they change the topic because they did not want to make a bad atmosphere, but they want to make a good atmosphere in the communication. So they are keep monitoring their address interlocutors' responses, and they are changing topics, and they are trying to figure out what they might like. And also, the participants thought that they were determining some acceptable level of politeness. So between friends, they knew each other already, so they don't really need to think about the some level of politeness. So what kind of topic can I say to them, or their speaking style? they're not really concerned about it. But when they talk to the stranger, they are more concerned about the politeness. So they were trying to think about what kind of topic can I say to them, and yeah, mostly like this. So some participants selected some topic based on their jobs and based on their background environment. So when their interlocutor has a job which might have a bad stereotypes in Korea, then the person try to avoid talking about the job because it can give some it can give some bad ideas and bad impressions about the talking about the job. So like this. So this also shows a constant result with the previous empirical work that the communicators are really very much interested in seeking for the expectations of relevance. And also this may additionally show that the communicators may follow the clause C and D in a relevance-focused production heuristic that they are keep monitoring their addressees, and then sometimes they reformulate or abandon or produce new utterances based on their assumptions about what their addresses feel like.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna have to come to the conclusion very soon.
Yes, just right. Here's my suggestions about it. So again, so production is very complicated, and also this is a very initial stage talking about production. So there might be a lot of development and further research we can do. And also, I suggest that production and interpretation may share some similarity, as communicators are often simultaneously involved in both of them. And the notion of expectation of relevance can constrain production. And also a relevance-focused production heuristic may be involved in the communicator's production. And these are the suggestion what I give right now. So here are the references, and thank you for the presentation, for listening to me.
Okay. Thank you. That's really interesting, and I really like the design of the experiment you did as well. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask. Now, we're going over time a little bit because of the technical difficulties we have today, but yeah, so whoever wants to start. Anne?
Thank you very much. I think it was really great. And I really liked that little experiment that you did about the storytelling, about the picture description and then the two tasks. I think it really does show that people are engaging in some kind of audience design, which I think a lot of people in the more hardcore experimental areas seem to often cast doubt on. So it's pretty much, you pretty often hear this idea that as speakers, we are egocentric. We choose our language based on our own point of view and not taking into account the perspectives of our audience. But I think this very clearly shows that you do modulate your contributions depending on whether the audience is the parents or your friends or whatever. So I guess one question to you then would be do you discern any kind of egocentrism? You said that people made assumptions about their interlocutors and what they would be interested in. I suppose that is one place where people could show some kind of egocentric bias. They may choose topics that they find interesting, as opposed to what their audience would find interesting. Did you see any evidence of that?
Yeah, I'm also interested in the egocentrism of the communicators. So when I interviewed some participants, some of them say that they think they were egocentric in their production because, like you say, some of they think that they just talk about whatever they want. So probably, even though between the interaction between friends, maybe friends, even though they are not interested in a certain topic, but they got some belief that my friend may not avoid saying I'm saying this. So especially when they talk to the friends, they think maybe my friends will allow this. Maybe my friends will allow whatever I'm saying like this. So actually, based on some social distance, they and closeness, they think they behave more egocentrically, they say.
Yeah, and we have Nick with hand up.
Hi. Yeah, really interesting presentation. I was thinking maybe along similar lines to Anne, but so I mean it's great that yeah you show that there's a lot of audience design going on. But then I was thinking the flip side of seeing so much audience design is then I was wondering about whether we would expect or whether that's compatible with the least effort path or some sort of least effort thing going on the production side. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of effort going into anticipating what sort of things are going to be relevant to the addressee. And that's sort of what you would expect, I think, as a relevance theorist, right? Because I'm supposed to be, if I'm speaking to you, according to relevance theory, I'm supposed to be making it possible for you to follow a least effort path, right? So there's a lot of work. I mean, maybe subconscious work, but there's potentially at least a lot of work in my being able to tailor my utterance such that it gets you to what I want you to think in a way where you don't have to go out of your way, right? So I'm wondering how you think that's compatible with the speaker following a least effort path, and whether you found any evidence for least effort or lowering of effort on the production side.
So it's really difficult to say if communicators follow a least effort or less least effort path like this, but I did not mention in this presentation, but in my PhD thesis, I mentioned about some role of social categorization and some group membership, because I found that another feature of the production in the empirical studies that some communicators, they were very concerned about their social group membership and social image and reputation. So sometimes they are following just production based on how they keep their social image and how they represent their desired self-image. So one of my discussions was about probably every communicator, they have their desired social image. So based on that image, they are just following a path of the least effort to construct that social image. So probably that might be sometimes they get more effort to construct a certain image, but still they got some idea about how to represent themselves. So I thought they might be following that path to constructing their own image, and that maybe help them to take less time to formulate their utterances, because that can be a kind of the guideline for them.
Thanks. You mean like the almost like there's a kind of repertoire of things that they know how to do. Is that what you're suggesting? So they kind of pick them off the shelf,
yeah.
as it.
Yeah. So like because some communicators, they rely on some schemata about a certain image. So for example, like a babysitter, they want to be seen like a professional and friendly babysitter. So they are just following some social stereotypes, stereotypical behavior. So probably that kind of the schemas may help to follow in terms of the production.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really interesting and very helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I know we are going over time, so yeah. Can I just ask very quickly, like very, very quickly? So this is more of a social. You're talking about the babysitter talking to parents, babysitter talking to their reference. What if it is more professional environment? Do you think, they may moderate or modify their speech or utterances based on their assessment on the hearer's knowledge? Like if the doctor is talking to their fellow doctors, or doctors talking to medical students, doctors talking to nurses, doctors talking to patients, or doctors talking on telly to unspecified number of audience. Do you think you may be able to find something there as well?
Well, probably if they are someone professional, then maybe, sorry?
Not social in that sense, I thought. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think in some professional talking way, maybe the way of speaking can be a little bit different, but still, I think it might be similar that the communicators, even though they are talking about the same thing, they formulate their production differently to the different audiences, I think, because so if the professional person talking to the professional person, then they might be say something about related to their profession, and they don't, when they talking about some work, then they don't need to think about how to say something in an easy way. But when they speak to the different person, then maybe they can change their way of speaking, even though they are talking about the same thing. So probably some different context can affect the production as well. But I think the macro frame might be not much different from the everyday conversation, I think.
Right. Thank you. Now, we had to go over time, so we're going to stop here. But thank you very much for very, very interesting talk today. And we look forward to hearing and reading more about your research. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so see you the next month and last Wednesday of each month.